Welcome to the Museum of Medical Horrors. For millennia, the boundary between medicine and torture was thin, fueled by desperation and a fundamental misunderstanding of the human body. For 2,000 years, medical science was ruled by the four humors. Doctors believed that every illness was simply a physical imbalance of fluids that needed to be violently corrected. To restore balance, they turned to bloodletting. Using sharp blades called phlemes, they would drain pints of blood until the patient often fainted from exhaustion. For less aggressive bleeding, they used leeches. In the 1830s, France alone imported 40 million of these parasites a year for medical use. Even George Washington fell victim. In 1799, doctors drained 80 ounces of his blood in one day. The treatment, not the infection, likely killed him. Before anesthesia, speed was the only mercy. Dr. Robert Liston was the fastest knife in London, capable of amputating a leg in under 30 seconds. In one surgery, he moved so fast he accidentally severed his assistant's fingers. Both died of sepsis and a spectator died of shock. A 300% mortality rate. Patients were typically held down by strong men. Pain was believed to be a vital stimulant that kept the heart beating during the dreadful steel of the knife. The introduction of ether in 1846 and chloroform in 1847 finally silenced the operating room, though early anesthesia carried its own risks of accidental overdose. For over 400 years, heavy metals were the bedrock of medicine. Mercury, or quicksilver, was the primary treatment for the scourge of syphilis. Patients were subjected to mercury rubs or placed in sweat boxes to vaporize the metal. They were trading their health for a literal poison. Doctors monitored patients for heavy salivation as a sign of success. In reality, it was the first stage of acute systemic mercury poisoning. The resulting side effects were catastrophic: destruction of the jawbone, loss of teeth, kidney failure, and ultimately a descent into madness. Abraham Lincoln took blue mass mercury pills for years. Historians believe the resulting poisoning caused his legendary rages, tremors, and insomnia. Mercury was even in teething powders. It caused pink disease in infants, a condition of raw skin and neurological decay not banned until 1954. Then there was arsenic. Fowler's solution was a popular tonic for malaria and leukemia, slowly poisoning the very patients it aimed to save. Victorian women even used arsenic wafers as a cosmetic to stay ghostly pale, unknowingly inviting organ failure, skin lesions, and cancer. While it occasionally slowed cell growth, the chronic poisoning led to secondary cancers and systemic failure, a beauty ritual that became a death sentence. Meet the everlasting pill. Made of metallic antimony, it was a potent emetic used to cleanse the body of toxins through violent purging. The pill was indestructible. After use, it was retrieved from the feces, washed and stored. These toxic pills were often passed down as family heirlooms. For over 400 years, heavy metals were the bedrock of medicine. Mercury, or quicksilver, was the primary treatment for the scourge of syphilis. Patients were subjected to mercury rubs or placed in sweat boxes to inhale the vapors, a trade-off of their health for a toxic metal. Doctors viewed heavy salivation as a sign the disease was leaving the body. In reality, it was the first stage of acute systemic mercury poisoning. Even Abraham Lincoln took blue mass mercury pills for his depression. Historians believe the poisoning caused his legendary rages and tremors. After the discovery of radium in 1898, the element was hailed as a wonder drug. Before its dangers were known, it was marketed as a panacea. Then there was arsenic. Fowler's solution was a popular tonic for everything from malaria to leukemia, slowly poisoning the patients it aimed to save. Victorian women used arsenic wafers to achieve a ghostly, pale complexion, unaware they were inviting organ failure and secondary cancers. But perhaps the darkest chapter was psychosurgery. Dr. Walter Freeman popularized the prefrontal lobotomy as a quick fix for the mind. By 1930, his teeth fell out and his jaw disintegrated. He died in 1932, so radioactive he had to be buried in a lead-lined coffin. He is still glowing. He traveled the country in his lobotomobile, performing surgeries in assembly line fashion, sometimes a dozen in a single day on desperate patients. But the horror wasn't just for the rich. The radium girls in factories painted watch dials with the same lethal glow, unaware they were being poisoned. They were told the paint was harmless, To keep a fine point, they licked their brushes thousands of times a day, literally eating radium for a living. Their jaws shattered and their spines collapsed. Their tragic deaths forced the first safety laws for workers, but for them, the glow was a death sentence. The dying workers sued the companies, a landmark case that established the right of individual workers to sue for damages from industrial abuse. Home revogator jars were ceramic crocks lined with radioactive ore, designed to charge drinking water overnight with life-giving radiation. Face powders and creams promised a youthful glow, unaware that the radium would lead to skin lesions and systemic failure in the pursuit of beauty. Rosemary Kennedy was one of his most famous victims. At age 23, a lobotomy intended for mood swings left her permanently incapacitated. Patients suffered deep, non-healing ulcers and cancer. In some cases, amputation was the only way to stop the resulting agony. In the nurseries of the 1800s, parents used soothing syrups to quiet crying babies. They were unknowingly feeding their infants pure morphine. Mrs. Winslow's was the most popular. Its secret ingredient was a lethal combination of morphine and high-proof alcohol, marketed as a miracle. 1 teaspoon could kill a newborn in hours. While the syrup silenced their cries, many infants simply never woke up from their deep sleep. The product remained on shelves until 1930, earning the horrific nickname, the baby killer, from those who lost children to its toxic embrace. In 1898, Bayer Pharmaceuticals marketed heroin as a safe, non-addictive substitute for morphine to treat coughs and colds. They specifically recommended it for children. Within years, thousands were trapped in addiction before the drug was finally pulled from the market. Within years, thousands were trapped in addiction. The medical community realized too late that heroin was even deadlier than the drug it replaced. Even toothaches were treated with cocaine. Sold for 15 cents, it provided instantaneous relief while inviting hallucinations and addiction. Cocaine was a staple in mail-order catalogs, used for everything from hay fever to lethargy. In both adults and children, it was a household name. Daily use was encouraged for seasonal allergies, unaware that the constant numbing of the nostrils was the first step toward lifelong addiction. The treatment of the mind was often the most violent. Egas Moniz won the Nobel Prize for discovering that severing neural pathways could cure psychosis. Dr. Walter Freeman popularized the prefrontal lobotomy in the U.S. He developed a 10-minute procedure he called the ice pick lobotomy. Freeman would render a patient unconscious with electroshock, then hammer an ice pick-like tool through the bone of the eye socket into the frontal lobe. He traveled the country in his lobotomobile, performing surgeries in assembly line fashion, sometimes a dozen in a single day on desperate patients. Rosemary Kennedy, at age 23, was lobotomized for mood swings. She was left unable to speak or walk for the rest of her life, a personality erased. Between 1936 and 1960, nearly 50,000 Americans were lobotomized. Many were left in a vegetative state or permanently disabled. Insulin coma therapy induced daily comas in schizophrenic patients with massive doses of insulin, hoping the shock would reset their brains. It often led to permanent damage. In a bizarre twist, doctors used malaria to cure syphilis. The high fevers were believed to kill the bacteria, though many patients died from the malaria first. To treat sinusitis, surgeons would literally drill through the eyebrow into the skull. Without imaging, they often inadvertently entered the brain or eye socket. Surgeons once treated TB by collapsing the lung, filling the chest cavity with wax, gauze, or plastic balls that could migrate through the body for decades. In the late 1700s, drowning victims were revived by blowing tobacco smoke into their rectums. It was believed the nicotine would jumpstart the lungs. These kits were placed along rivers like the Thames. The practice only ended when nicotine was discovered to be a cardiac toxin, not a stimulant. In Australia, people with rheumatism would spend hours inside the rotting carcass of a dead whale, believing the fumes would draw out their pain. Ancient Egyptians treated toothaches with a paste made of mashed dead mice, a desperate remedy for a painful world before modern dentistry. In the Victorian pursuit of a wasp waste, dieters would swallow tapeworm eggs. The parasite would hatch and eat their food from the inside out. Fashion was as dangerous as medicine. Corsets were tightened until organs were displaced, a physical sacrifice for the ideal Victorian silhouette. Removal was even deadlier. Doctors used traps with food to lure the worm out, which often caused the patient to choke to death in the process. For centuries, European medicine relied on corpse medicine. Ground-up mummies were sold to treat everything from headaches to internal bleeding. It was believed that the dead body contained the vitality of the living. This era of medical cannibalism saw the human body used as a raw material for health. King Charles II took the King's Drops, a tincture made of pulverized human skulls. Skulls from mossy remains were particularly prized for their potency. In ancient Rome, spectators would rush the arena to drink the warm blood of a fallen gladiator, believing it could cure epilepsy and transfer strength. Human fat, or oxungia, was a standard ingredient for ointments. Harvested from executed criminals, it was believed to be a panacea for joint and bone pain. Executioners often ran a side business selling poor sinners' fat to apothecaries. This macabre practice of medical cannibalism lasted until the 18th century. Even as recently as the 1920s, a sterilized human fat preparation called humanol was sold in Germany as an injectable treatment for scars. In the 1920s, surgeon Serge Voronov became a global sensation for rejuvenation therapy, grafting monkey and goat glands onto aging humans. Patients paid exorbitant fees to have thin slices of animal testicles sutured into their scrotums, believing it would restore vigor and eternal youth. It was a massive placebo. The human immune system rapidly rejected the animal tissue, leaving the grafts to shrivel into hard, useless lumps inside the body. At the turn of the century, paraffin wax was used as a cosmetic filler. It was heated and injected into wrinkles, where it solidified into a permanent shape. The body's immune system reacted violently, forming painful nodules called paraffinomas that migrated across the face, leaving patients permanently disfigured. In the 1950s, thalidomide was marketed as a safe wonder drug for morning sickness. It was sold in 46 countries without proper testing for fetal safety. Over 10,000 babies were born with phocomelia, malformed limbs, and thousands more were miscarried. It remains medicine's most horrific modern regulatory failure. The tragedy was only blunted in the U.S. by Dr. Francis Kelsey, who stubbornly refused to approve the drug despite massive corporate and political pressure. But some medical horrors were intentional. Japan's Secret Unit 731 performed horrific vivisections on live, conscious humans during World War II. Nazi doctors like Joseph Mengele conducted torturous experiments on prisoners, forever scarring history in the pursuit of pseudo-scientific and unethical data. In Alabama, the Tuskegee study tracked the natural progression of syphilis in black men for 40 years, long after a cure was discovered. Consent was never given. At Willowbrook State School, doctors deliberately infected over 700 disabled children with hepatitis to study the virus's progression in filthy, overcrowded conditions. At Holmesburg Prison, inmates were used as acres of skin to test toxic chemicals like dioxin and Agent Orange, leaving them permanently scarred and traumatized. Project MKUltra saw the CIA use LSD, hypnosis, and electroshock on both willing and unwitting citizens in a terrifying Cold War quest for mind control. The program led to the tragic death of scientist Frank Olson, who fell from a 10th-floor window after being unknowingly dosed with LSD at a secret retreat. These tragedies forced reform. The 1938 Act was born after the sulfanilamide disaster, mandating that drugs prove they are safe before reaching the public. From the shadows of the past, modern medical ethics was born. The Nuremberg Code made informed consent the ultimate bedrock of human research. History's cures remind us how far we've come. A long, bloody path from toxic superstition to the safe, evidence-based science we rely on today.